Yeah, this is Point Black. Coming in hard and off the card, coming with the flow from the barrio, the heat from the street, the backs, the crack backs, and the boom bib to their line that's lips. Now today we have another one coming from PBNN, Point Black National News, but this is Tucker Carlson on his channel and coming with his news. But it's interesting to hear what he has to say, and many American people needs to really listen to what he's saying because many lives have been lost in the matter of what he's talking about. Not just the talk, but the truth of the matter, the reality in which really happened, and many people lost their lives, leading all the way back to what? Donkey Bush Jr. and his garbage, along with the deep state and probably the Zionists and everyone else. So without further ado, let's let Tucker Carlson do the talking, as he always do in his great reviews, and let's look in.
What a betrayal the war in Afghanistan turned out to be. Above all, it was a betrayal of the American public, the people who for 20 years paid for the occupation. It was a betrayal of the ones who died there, of course, and of the tens of thousands of Americans who will carry the scars from this disaster for the rest of their lives. They were lied to. We were all lied to, and we have a right to feel bitter about that. But the war in Afghanistan was also, if we're going to be completely honest about it, a betrayal of the Afghan people. Our leaders made promises to them they knew they couldn't keep.
Excellent.
Honorable countries don't do that. It's shameful. Imagine being an Afghan employee at Bagram Air Base. You woke up the other morning to find your American patrons gone. They didn't tell you they were leaving, they just left. So what happens to you now in a country run by the Taliban? It's hard to think about that. And yet tonight, many Americans are thinking about it, and they're feeling distressed as they do. Americans are kind people and generous. They are quicker and more eager to help strangers than anyone else in the world.
Doesn't sound right.
We haven't seen polling on it, but we bet if you asked 100 people, should we try to help Afghans who are facing persecution for helping us, most Americans would say, of course we should. And we should be glad that they say that. You should be happy you live in a country where your neighbors love children and dogs and want to help refugees. We are generous and empathetic people, and we should be proud. Unfortunately, there are many in our ruling class who are anxious to take advantage of that, anxious to take advantage of our best qualities. They see our decency and our weakness, and they exploit those things, and they do it relentlessly. Let's try to save our loyal Afghan interpreters, we tell them. Perfect, they think. We'll open the borders and change the demographic balance of this country. Of course, that's exactly what they're doing right now on our southern border, naturally in the name of human rights and compassion. And they would like to do the very same thing with the disaster unfolding in Afghanistan, the disaster that they created. Watch this kid from MSNBC yesterday. Remember as you watch that he is regarded with total seriousness in Washington as a foreign policy expert, and that his fellow foreign policy experts wholeheartedly agree with him.
We're talking about an evacuation of people who helped the wars, and that's an obligation of the United States, but it's sort of a moral floor that's functioning as a moral ceiling. The United States, the Biden administration, isn't doing things necessary like increasing TPS access, letting in refugees by the millions to escape their certain fate at the hands of the Taliban.
So we must, quote, let in refugees by the millions, said the mustachioed foreign policy expert. The millions. Millions is not a handful of loyal Afghan interpreters. That's not even a fleet of cargo planes full of loyal Afghan interpreters. Millions is a good chunk of the entire population of Afghanistan, brought to our country at our expense to live in your neighborhood at the very moment our national fabric is fraying, in case you haven't noticed, and the United States is becoming unmistakably poorer.
Hello?
And that's not just one man's eccentric opinion on MSNBC, you should know. All the clever people are saying exactly the same thing. The U.S. should take as many Afghan refugees as it can, demands a recent headline in New York Magazine. As many refugees as we can? How many refugees is that? And is it really a good idea to do that for us? Don't ask. You're not allowed to ask that question because asking is racist. Watch.
The notion that their sort of horrific fear-mongering and racism doesn't carve out the men and women in Afghanistan who kept our soldiers alive for 2 decades is a new level of reprehensible.
So right-wing personalities using the crisis in Afghanistan to push an anti-refugee sentiment.
They're getting caught up in what I call the brown menace, which is this Trumper right-wing fear of people coming into the country from Central and South America. These people seem to be getting swept up into that xenophobia.
It's Stephen Miller's response to the collapse of Afghanistan, the fall of Kabul, the takeover of the Taliban was, look at Biden. He's trying to get brown people to come into the country. It's sickening and it's pathetic.
And this other idiot,
It's hilarious, is what it is. The right way.
They're talking that stupid shit because when you really look at the situation, if you really want to look at it for what it is that what really Tucker Carlson, and I'm sure he's going to explain, but I already knew because they've been doing shit like this. You know what I'm saying? They did it with the German scientists when they brought them in this country and used them to create all the science shit they were doing over there. They brought it over here. You know what I'm saying? By capturing them, and Germany fell, and many of them were working for the United States. You know what I'm saying? Even right here on Plum Island. You know what I'm saying? And they are German mad scientists, just like Andy Fauci killing motherfucking Weasel. You know what I'm saying? But what Tucker Carlson is really talking about is, you know, when you create a situation in a person's country, and then you ramp it up all over the world in all the 34 countries, probably of NATO, you know what I'm saying, and many other places in Britain, France, and all over, you know what I'm saying, you create this atmosphere of hiring people and having people make attacks and shit like that under the guise that it is terrorists, so the people of the United States don't see it that way when they see the news. What they see on the news is somebody doing some shooting and going in there because they said the person disrespected Allah or Muhammad. You know what I'm saying? So the people came over here and now they're shooting and killing American people, you know what I'm saying? And then they're going on planes and try to blow planes up and the device then go off and, you know what I'm saying? And many other attacks and many other things going on, but all blamed during the time of the Bush era and Tony Blair and Dick the nut gut fucking nutcase ass jackass Cheney, just like his daughter, you know what I'm saying? Was over there ramping up all kinds of confusion, mass, stirring the pot of the witches, brewing the warlocks and all. They're up in there with their high hat on, which they probably stole that too, and sitting up there mixing the brew. Now, when they mix the brew, and then, you know what I'm saying, all that goes down, and then to seal the deal, you know what I'm saying, Bush nutcase ass Jr. had this plan was already in play long before the Trade Center the two Trade Center and the third building was actually blown up, but actually came down. But what you don't understand about that is they had planned that out. They had planned that out because there is no way a building falls straight down demolition style. If you go back and look at the way the buildings fell down, you'd realize it fell down as a demolition style. And even when you saw the puff of smokes coming out the side as if somebody was setting off a chain reaction or bomb mechanism that will loosen the beams after being painted with that silver acid stuff and even cut the beams itself. So, you know what I'm saying, where you could say the acid must have been so powerful that it actually literally ate through the metal, or they pre-cut it and then put that stuff on there. So when they bombed it, like in a demolition, you know what I'm saying, the beams let go. And as the beams let go and the beams collapse, most of the beams that are connected to the walls and in the walls will fall directly, you know, from a slide, and that's why it's a slant cut, because all it's going to do is slide and fall. Slide is the same thing if it's here on this platform like that, and you cut it to that perfection or put whatever. When you set off the explosive, the beams that are connected this way, you know what I'm saying, in between here would be the cut and the stuff that they put. So when you an explosive device, and once you set that off, instead of the whole beam falling this way, all kinds of ways, it's gonna fall directly. It's gonna slide like that. and then it's going to stop about right here, and the whole weight is going to push it all down, bang. So it all fall bang, 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 bang. You know what I'm saying? But when you create these type of things, and then you use this technique, and you kill many Americans, this evil beast, you know what I'm saying, and these Zionists and whoever's involved in the deep state bullshit, kill many people in the World Trade Center using this technique. And this is why many of the workers couldn't really do any talking because they were too sick. Many of the civil workers who tried to rescue people and remove them from there got sick as well from that acid or whatever stuff, chemicals they had there. You know what I'm saying? On top of all other types of cancer, they got cancer. And cancer comes from most of the stuff that was, you know what I'm saying, to be put there. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, once that happened now, you know what I'm saying, Bush gets on TV and he started talking about, you know, I know the Congress or whatever probably gives them the money to go into Afghanistan. You need the money, you need to steal the money to pay the soldiers, steal the money, whatever, and give to Afghans and whoever paid them off or whoever's involved on the other side. Because during that time, we saw a Hercules military plane being loaded with like bricks and bricks of crates of money. You know what I'm saying? Crates and crates of wide crates, like you see in a bank, wide crates of money loading on, and then said the money disappeared. I believe that was used to pay off, you know what I'm saying, the people on the other side who was facilitating this groove in itself could have even been the Taliban. You see what I'm saying? Because remember, the Taliban then comes in and take over the country and then say that they're going to rule. So after this all took place, and you know, this Bush started talking about, you know, if the Afghans don't hear us, they're going to hear us now. You know what I'm saying? And even when you look at the one that they were running after, the guy, I forgot his name, the Arab guy, he saw so many disguises. If you see, there were 4 or 5 different types of guys looking like the same guy. So you know they were all involved somewhere. So boom, when you create that type of situation and the people get hurt, killed, murdered in the country, their country, and then they were helping you to facilitate your criminal activity in which you had chumped up into a war anyway, because it wasn't the Afghans that did none of that you saw. All that was done by Bush Donkey Jr., the asshole himself, the whole ass, as a matter of fact. But, you know what I'm saying, it was all chumped up by him. And then once all that happened, he gets the money, he goes into Afghanistan, he killed up the people, he murdered up the people. The Taliban probably even helped them murder the people, you know, and all types of bullshit, same as we've seen in the Gaza Strip. You know what I'm saying? Now, all this happened, you know what I'm saying, because we don't know who the Taliban truly is working for and what they're doing underneath the sheets to their own people. So now once we see all this, you know, to bring in that dictatorship bullshit and now the bullshit and the bullshit. And then once that all happened, now everything has cleared, and Trump had a way of bringing the soldiers and the equipment home and all that needed to be extracted from Afghanistan. And then he gets out of office, and what's the first thing creep Joe Biden does? He goes in and just draw it out and left the people, soldiers. He left soldiers there. He left people that were working for them. You know what I'm saying? The Afghan people who might have been working with them, you know what I'm saying, on the crooked shit or whatever that was going on. You know what I'm saying? He left those people there, and the Taliban, he drove the Taliban, and then once Biden snatched them out of there, you know what I'm saying, creeped Joe Biden, because he knew the wrong that they had done. So he was trying to cover up bullshit. You see what I'm saying? Trump had exposed it in all ways, and if Trump was the president and was able to do it the right way, it would have exposed Bush at his highest level, which is still already exposed him to its higher level. But we'd have got a more clear picture of many things. But that's why Joe Biden couldn't wait to cheat his way in there, get in there, and the first thing, one of the things he do, he snatches the people out of Afghanistan. Now the people are saying that we should take on the people who have helped us and so forth. But the problem with that is, like Tucker Carlson is going to explain, the problem with that is when you do that, that's not all that's going to come in the refugee package. You know what I'm saying? So all the enemies that the demon Democrats has created, and the deep state and the Zionists and all the motherfuckers has created, is they now in bed with them because they have manipulated and controlled them, you know what I'm saying, to now do what they do to their own people, and still act as if it's a war and this and that and the third, while they murder off the people and then turn around and swing it back into our country. So it's the same thing like South America. There's the many stuff that they did to the people in South America, America intervening in their country and shit, and now you're talking about the Libya side. So he's letting every single enemy that they create, not the American people. You know what I'm saying? Because if the American people have any voice, it would have been based on the fact of probably racist remarks and shit like that, but not in the command and chief seat. So now that he's done that and we can move Trump's plan and all this and remove it, he's opened up every border door to every criminal, every crime, everybody that they hurt, everybody that they beat up, everybody that they murdered, everybody family who they bombed and this and now all the crooked Talibans and whoever all else who they're working for and working for them and everybody in the whole China, everybody can come through our borders and come into this country by the billions. So now they created all the enemies and now the enemy is going to pound us out as if we supported their bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
Hates brown people. The only problem is most Afghans are not brown. Your average green-eyed Pashtun is as pale as anyone sitting on this set right now. Essentially, they're bearded white guys. Do the dummies on cable television know that? It's possible they don't know it. From their perspective, anyone who doesn't have access to the New York City subway must be a foreigner, and all foreigners are brown. We know that. They just are. So maybe they really think that. More likely, though, they know the truth. They know that calling you a racist is the fastest way to make you obey. Do we really need millions of Afghan refugees in Phoenix, you ask? Shut up, racist! Okay, go ahead and do it. That's how the process typically works. In fact, that's pretty much how it always works with everything now. At this point, fighting racism is the universal justification for every bad idea. Tear down our statues, okay. Stop teaching math, okay. Get rid of standardized testing, all right. Defund the police, move millions of Afghan refugees to swing states to help the Democratic Party. Okay. Oppose any of it, and you're a racist. So in the end, it always happens. And in this case, it may happen, it probably will. But what happens then to us?
Howdy.
How will this new wave of immigration affect America? Will America be a better country? Or will it be a little more like Afghanistan, which is to say, not really a better country? We can't be sure of what's going to happen. We can't see the future. But for a hint, a glimpse, maybe we ought to pay some attention to what has happened in Europe recently. They've just gone through this. So one Saturday night last month, authorities discovered the body of a 13-year-old girl next to a tree in Vienna, Austria. She had been drugged and raped and murdered. It took a few days, but by Monday, authorities announced they had arrested 2 asylum seekers from Afghanistan for the rape and murder. Shortly after that, the Chancellor of Austria identified the problem. The problem is Austria's refugee policy. Quote, I find it intolerable for people to come to us, say they are seeking protection, and then commit cruel, barbaric crimes in Austria. Yeah, but now they're getting used to it because it's been happening with increasing frequency throughout Western Europe for years now, 6 years. And every honest person knows that. Maybe the dummies on cable news don't know it, but people who live there do.
Oh, wait.
Cheryl Bernard knows it. Cheryl Bernard, by the way, has been an advocate for refugees for decades. She's not against immigration. She's for it. But over time, she's concluded that the West simply is not capable, not doing a good job of successfully assimilating many Afghan refugees. Some, but many not at all. By every measure, Afghan resettlement in Europe has been an utter failure. Why is that? Maybe we should pay some attention.
I think I'll pass.
Okay, all right. Afghan refugees, Bernard wrote, are notorious for barbaric attacks. Attacks that left-wing politicians in Europe frequently cover up for fear of being called racist. For example, quote, and these are Bernard's words, a gang of 50 Afghans who terrorized women in the neighborhood of the Linz train station were brushed off by a government official with the remark that this was an unfortunate consequence of bad weather. End quote. You could see that happening here, by the way. In another instance, just last summer, an Afghan migrant was arrested in Germany for raping an 11-year-old girl. Authorities released him from jail in just a few days. They said he was not dangerous, and anyone who disagreed with that was a racist, of course. The migrant then proceeded to rape another girl. This time she was 13 years old. Statistics show these are not just anecdotes. It happens a lot. Ask anyone who lives there who is honest. Germany's government just conducted a study showing that rates of violent crime in Germany, those rates have been declining for years, by the way, shot up abruptly in 2015. And that was the moment when refugees from Afghanistan and Syria arrived in Germany. More than 90% of the new crimes in Germany, the German government has found, were committed by asylum seekers, more than 90%. This is not a slur, it's not slander, those are the numbers. And it's not just a problem in Europe. Ever been to Pakistan? Here's one journalist acknowledging that it is happening in places like Iran and, yes, Pakistan as well.
You know, it's something like 2.8 million refugees in the world are Afghani refugees, basically about 1 in 10. And let's remember during the Trump years, we lowered the refugee admission to the lowest possible level that it ever had been. And also many European countries had shut their door to refugees and sent them back to places like Afghanistan. And that was before all of this happened. So I cannot even imagine what's going to take place afterwards. In countries, you know, neighboring countries like Pakistan has something like 1.4 million Afghani refugees. Iran has about 1 million. And now you're seeing a huge influx that's going to be going there as well, too. And you're talking about destabilizing those countries even further.
Yay! Okay. So Afghan refugees have destabilized countries into which they have moved in large numbers, but we have a moral obligation to take them anyway. Really, why is that? Why is this our unique moral burden? Isn't the U.S. government's first obligation to its own people? Isn't that the only point of having a government, to look out for its citizens? Why else have a government, actually? That might be a good question for Congressman Peter Meijer of Grand Rapids. He's a Republican. But he spent months demanding the Biden administration import as many Afghan refugees as possible. He just sent a letter to the White House, which was signed by dozens of House Republicans, saying it's just as important to evacuate American citizens as it is to accept Afghan refugees and vice versa. He also tweeted that it's, quote, beyond shameful in response to a report that the administration is, quote, prioritizing the evacuation of U.S. personnel from the country. So here you have a Republican.
The whistles go woo!
Attacking the Biden administration because they're putting American citizens before foreign nationals. And lots of other Republicans on Capitol Hill agree. And this might be a moment to pause and state the obvious. None of this is the fault of the Afghan refugees. They're desperate to leave. Nobody blames them. Most of them are probably great people. The fault is ours. It's with people like that. The idea that you can move people from one completely different country with a completely different culture and language and religion and history on the other side of the globe.
I like turtles.
Into our country in large numbers and everything will be just fine is insane. It doesn't work. There may be a good way to do that. Nobody has yet figured it out. And until somebody does, maybe we should pause if we care about our own people.
Now, when he said Republicans that were asking for the Afghans to be brought here, in other words, it could have been two things. One could have been the evacuation, that he wanted to evacuate the people that were helping the bullshit that was going on. Because remember, Trump didn't cause the war. He was trying to finalize it and make it go away. So the only way to do that would have been to bring the people that were helping first out, and the soldiers and stuff out, so they can, and the equipment out, and then have some kind of diplomatic understanding. You know what I'm saying? So when you say a whole bunch of Republicans, and that idiot Republican you just mentioned said that bullshit, you know what I'm saying? Now we could easily say, on the other hand, that you have many Republicans, I explained this before, and you have many Democrats and other groups of parties and whatever. But many of them switch parties according to the sabotage and the ruling of the game. Same as you saw when the Republican Party years ago switched from, even having a black face in it to all white, you know what I'm saying, and racist as well. You know what I'm saying? That was taking over, even going back to the Tulsa incidents and all these different stuff. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at today, you see the same thing. You have many Democrats who have switched parties over the years. It could have been 40, 47 years, 50 years where they started switching parties. And before you know it, you have newcomers into the Republican Party, and they've been marinating there now going on maybe 47 years or a little bit less. You know what I'm saying? And by the time you turn around, when it comes time for a major apocalypse situation that the Demon Democrats wants to create, these Republicans and so forth they're sitting in their cells, you know what I'm saying, their cell, you know what I'm saying, will do what they have to do on the Republican side, so the Republican side look like shit and agreeing along with shit in many ways. So later on now, when you have reports, this is the way it'll come out.
The Biden administration, by the way, is still refusing to guarantee the safety of Americans going to the airport in Afghanistan. Joe Biden's national security advisor, that would be Jake Sullivan, the Rhodes Scholar, came out yesterday and suggested it is the fault of the Americans trapped in Afghanistan because they didn't leave sooner, even though Mark Milley and Joe Biden have been saying for weeks that the Taliban would never take over in 3 days. Couldn't happen. So instead of rescuing those Americans still stuck there, we are saving Afghans. One CNN reporter called Natasha Bertrand just reported that, in fact, we're relocating more non-citizens, Afghans, than we are Americans out of Afghanistan. About 330 U.S. citizens left Kabul yesterday, Bertrand wrote, along with, quote, about 770 non-American family members.
You see where I'm coming from?
So Joe Biden hasn't answered any questions about this. Today he walked away from reporters once again without even addressing it. Meanwhile, American citizens remain trapped. Reporter Phil Wegman from Real Clear Politics says he just got off the phone with Senator Bill Hagerty's office. Hagerty represents Tennessee. Is getting reports of Americans in safe houses near the Karzai airport who are, quote, trying to figure out when they can run for it. Run for it. That's what Americans have been left to do. Afghans are certainly doing that. Take a look at this picture of hundreds of Afghans crammed into a C-17 cargo plane. This was the air traffic controller's reaction when he saw the flight lift off.
Okay, how many people do you think are on your jet? 800 people on your jet? Holy cow.
So every one of those 800, according to Congressman Peter Meyer, who's like 33 years old, quote, risked their lives to help protect American troops.
Now my husband completely fills me up. I feel his tool hitting deep inside me, and he lasts more than...
Quote, risked their lives to help protect American troops. Really, Peter Meyer? How do you know that? Well, you don't know that. You're just making it up. You don't know their names, you don't know their backgrounds, you don't know squat. But he claims it anyway. Stephen Law, who's one of Mitch McConnell's chief political operatives, also wants you to know that every one of those Afghans on that plane is a hero, unlike you. No need for vetting. In fact, Stephen Law wants every one of them in his neighborhood immediately. We know that because he just said so on social media. Right.
Yeah.
But not in his neighborhood, actually. So it's pretty easy for people like Stephen Law to encourage unlimited migration of refugees because, in the end, they're not actually going to his neighborhood. They're going mostly to Republican states like Texas, where they'll be settled in places where the Democratic Party needs help. So big picture, you've got to wonder, how long will Republican voters tolerate leaders who so clearly don't care at all about them? As you may have noticed, we have problems here. We have a housing crisis, by the way. A big one. Do you have kids? Ask them. According to the Wall Street Journal, the amount of available entry-level housing in the United States, and that's defined as homes up to 1,400 square feet, is at a 5-decade low. So when the supply shrinks, the cost rises. The median value of a home in California just rose above $800,000, first time in history. Less than 40% of the millennial generation will own a home by the age of 34. They're all renting, and rent is going up too, a lot. The growth in median rent outpaced the growth in median renter income in nearly every state between 2001 and 2019. That's a disaster. That's a terrible development for American citizens. So why is it happening? Well, lots of reasons, but one reason it's happening is America's becoming a lot more crowded than it ever was. And one of the reasons for that is that we're now living through the biggest influx of refugees in American history. We are on pace for at least 2 million illegal immigrants arriving in America this year alone. That's far more than the number of asylum applicants who arrived in Europe in 2015. That was over 1 million, just over 1 million. That totally changed Europe forever. So how many of the Afghans that we accept, that Stephen Law and Peter Meyer are demanding we accept, are going to bring family members with them? Well, the vast majority, it turns out. It's not just the translators. Roughly 70% of the special immigrant visas that we have given out in recent years have gone to relatives. More than 70%. So in general, chain migration like this has been a huge driver of our population growth. It's not Americans having more children, it's chain migration. Recent data show that each new immigrant sponsored an average of 3.45 additional immigrants.
Oh my God, that was so funny!
Getting a lot more than you thought you were. Between 2005 and 2016, 9.3 million foreign nationals were able to resettle in our country for no other reason except they had extended family members who already lived here. Oh, so it's much more than they're telling you. How many of these Afghans and their family members, you have to wonder, are excited about coming to America? Huh. It's interesting. Maybe you should ask that question. Maybe you should ask Ilhan Omar. Her position is the only reason that American citizens might object to being flooded with millions of new refugees from Afghanistan is because Americans, people who are born here and built this country, are actually mediocre and insecure. Watch.
And then you've got these crazy people on the right doing, you know, what they always do with their fear mongering and their hateful rhetoric. And I know what some of these people are worried about is that they're worried that refugees like myself, when they come to this country, will outshine them.
So the obvious response to that is to attack poor Ilhan Omar, but we're not going to do that. The truth is, this is our fault. She is our fault. Ilhan Omar is living proof that we are not very good at resettling refugees. She was saved from a refugee camp in Kenya as a child by the kindness and generosity of America, and yet she has grown to hate America and the people who live here. Where did she learn those attitudes? Well, of course, in college. Our colleges, we taught her to hate our country. She became worse after she got here. We ought to pause before we do that again to anyone, even if they've been translators.
Hello there.
With the State of the Union just days away, the Washington Post editorial board is issuing a dire warning to President Biden, urging him to address the border crisis head on, both in the speech and in policy, writing, quote, Mr. Biden will lose re-election if he doesn't address the southern border. He needs to convey that he understands that many see the millions of border crossings as a breakdown in one of the federal government's core responsibilities, and outline how he will use executive authorities to stop it if Congress won't.
So uncivilized.
Victor Avila is a retired ICE agent running for Congress in Texas, and he joins us to discuss. Victor, thank you for joining us this morning. That Washington Post thing is, I'm scratching my head a little bit because their advice is you need to talk about the border in your State of the Union address because Congress won't close the border when they admit that he reversed the Trump era executive order. So what can a President Biden at a State of the Union say when he's the one who reversed the order and still has the power to enact those policies and just won't, even after visiting Brownsville?
Yes.
And that's the issue, Rachel, is that we all know that he has the authority to do it because he's the one that actually undid it. And the American people are no longer buying this. They want the president, and he has the, at this point, he must address this critical issue, and that's border security, illegal immigration, because it's not just the conservative people in this in the country. Believe it, it's the Democrats that are asking